the rest of the market right now. Well, stock markets are soaring, and gold erasing some of last week's gains, though it's still selling pretty high. Our next guest says gold won't be down for long.
Peter Schiff, Euro Pacific Capital President and Chief Global Strategist, says gold will break $1,000 soon, and it won't stop there. So should you be buying up the Krugerrands? Hi, Peter.
Hi, Liz. How are you?
Okay, gold touched 1,030, I think, about a year and a half ago or so, and it never was able to sort of breach that ceiling. It touched 1,000 a couple of months ago, but it can't make it through it and further. Why do you feel that there's some sort of catalyst, and what is it hovering on the horizon that will bring it there?
We never, for a while, the 1,000 was a barrier on the Dow. It took a long time for the Dow to break through 1,000. And when it finally did, it went straight up and eventually got to 14,000. I think you have a similar psychological barrier with gold. But also, if you look at how close it's come, you know, when gold was at 1,000, remember, oil was at $140 a barrel, and the Dow was at 14,000. Gold is a lot closer to its highs than stocks or other commodities, and I think that says a lot about the underlying strength of gold.
How much of your wealth is in gold?
Well, a lot of it, and a lot of it is in gold mining stocks.
Percentage-wise.
Well, I mean, most of my wealth is in my company. So if you take my company, Euro Pacific Capital, out of my personal wealth, more than half of my liquid assets are in gold and gold mining stocks.
I asked because Toby Smith, who I just mentioned before, said maybe 5% of your income should be in gold as a hedge against the worst that can happen. Is 5% a reasonable figure?
No, I think 5% is too low. I think most people should probably have 10 to 20% in gold and in gold-related type assets. And depending on how young you are and how aggressive you want to be. I mean, if young people came to me, some in their 20s, want to buy stocks, I mean, gold stocks is something that they really should own, and they can own a lot of them now, because I think a lot of these stocks can go up 50 or 100 times.
Your theory is to buy a lot of stocks from overseas in Asia-Pacific areas that return quite the dividends. I mean, you and I talked about this. You have some that have great, unbelievable yields, so you're getting paid no matter what the stock does. That said, what is going to bring us to we joke about it, the doomsday scenario, because people call you Dr. Doom, but what would bring us to that point if the financial crisis of September and the lows of March didn't do it?
Well, you know, remember, during all this financial crisis, the world was still lending us money. The U.S. government was still able to bail people out and prop people up. Even though this is damaging our economy long term, they were able to get away with it because the Chinese were there and the Japanese and the Saudis and the rest of the world was foolishly lending us more money. But at some point, that is going to stop. And it's not going to stop,
They've already hinted. The Chinese are already hinting they're unhappy.
Well, if they're hinting, you better believe that they actually are. And something is going to happen, because we can't continue to borrow money and spend it and pretend that we have a real economy. And when the world wakes up and realizes that...
When?
They're going to do it soon. I mean, look what's happening in China. Chinese exports are down, but their manufacturing is still growing. So they're producing more stuff. They're just not sending it over here. And the world is going to understand that they don't need to lend us money, that they don't need our consumers, that there's no point to export if you can't import back. And so the world's going to export less, but they're going to still produce as much. They're just going to consume themselves. But America is in for a rude awakening, and we're going to have a major economic decline when we have to get used to producing and saving again.
Richard Fisher, who's the president of the Dallas Fed, had a fascinating interview in the weekend edition of the Journal in which he said the Chinese, he was just over in China, the Chinese were really curious to the point of almost being obsessive about the Fed now buying up treasuries. That is, whether the Fed will monetize the debt that the Treasury has been building up. Was that the step across the Rubicon in terms of the Treasury eventually being unable to sell its treasuries when, in fact, the Fed is buying up a lot of this debt?
I mean, that's their greatest fear, and that's everybody's fear, that the government's going to print money to pay back the debt. But that has to happen. I mean, we can't pay back the debt. It's impossible. Americans simply cannot be taxed enough to retire this debt. So default is the only option out there. The question is,
in what form? Well, it's not the only option. What Richard Fisher says, the other option is to stop buying the debt and to soak up a lot of that liquidity.
I'm talking about our option. The U.S. government, since we can't pay the money back, we have to default in some way. Either we do it honestly by telling our creditors we can't pay, or we print money and pay our creditors back in money of diminished value. But that's the same thing as default.
We have 15 seconds. Are you going to run for Senate in the state of Connecticut? Ooh. You have followers who are blogging about it. It's all over the Internet. Would you run for Senate?
I might.
You might run for Senate.
I'm thinking about it.
You're thinking about it.
Yes.
What do you think you would do if you were a senator?
I don't know. I mean, I try to put a stop to what the government is doing. You know, I try to stop all the bailouts and the stimulus and try to restore sound money and restore respect to the Constitution. I don't know if I can do it, but I might be willing.
And the income tax?
Well, I would try my best to end it. I don't know what I can do as a senator. I'd have to try to find out once I got there.
Peter Schiff. Fascinating stuff.
All right, you better announce it right here on Fox Business.
Yeah,
You're ready.
Thank you.